Whilst everyone has their eyes on the here and now, people might not be thinking too much about what lies ahead, well, unless you're one of the 11 teams on the F1 grid. And this might be a bold call, but I genuinely think for all the talk we're hearing about Mercedes to lead the way into 2026, how McLaren might continue their surge and Cadillac arriving on the scene as the brand new team on the grid, there's one dark horse amongst them all that might come out of nowhere, and that's Aston Martin. In this video, I just want to entertain a bit of a thought I've been having in my head for the last month or so, that Aston Martin could live up to their potential in 2026, and no one will see it coming. Let's get into it. Since becoming Aston Martin, the vision of Lawrence Stroll and those around him was to create a team that could mix it with the big boys, the big time, just so his son could win a world title. I mean, of course not. I mean, where'd you get that from, Jake? Since the team switched along from Force India and Racing Point and now to Aston Martin, there's been a legitimate goal of taking a very iconic British brand back to the top of racing, and with some serious claims for titles, both constructors and in the drivers' titles. And that's involved a lot of things, from investment of huge proportions right across the board, drivers, resources, personnel and expertise of the highest quality that they can find. But you have to say, up to now, it's been fairly straight line with their performance. And that's kind of been down to a few hitches and, well, other established teams around them doing a better job. The start of the 2023 season looked like it was going to be a big year for them, like they'd cracked the code finally and found some performance after all of their efforts that they had put into the team in that spell. And it was a big moment for the team, with Fernando Alonso jumping on board, raring to go in his new team, and like any other driver of his stature, creating that better morale and spirit to improve performance, and I guess for the team to do well. And it showed within the first few races. 6 podiums for Aston Martin out of nowhere. Fernando Alonso bringing them home and really showing that he had not lost it at that point. They were looking like genuine contenders. A lot of people were talking about them off the back, along with Red Bull as well, in the time that there was a lot of dominance going on with Max Verstappen and him just doing his own thing, but then a lack of a consistent rearguard of Lance to support his teammates' efforts. That momentum kind of really fell away from them in that season and more faded into the midfield. The year after was feeling optimistic. They maybe learnt from some of the mistakes, the trials and tribulations that they'd been through, but to no avail, with another key member of their team, Dan Fallows, hopping off mid-season, which is the last thing that an F1 team wants. Big change and uncertainty during that mid-season break. Clearly then, the results weren't aligning with the team's targets that Lawrence Stroll, of course, and his vision has set on being the top dog on the grid. So they needed to do something big and make a real statement. And boy, did they do that. That's where one of the most respected figures in Formula 1 of all time comes into the frame, who could apply his little magic touch and pencil to his drawing graph in his locked away room, focusing on how Venturi effects work. I mean, the guy's a genius. I'm talking about Adrian Newey. Capitalising on all the controversy and instability within the Red Bull camp at the time, it was an almighty coup for Aston Martin to get Adrian's signature on the dotted line, even though they agreed to fork out £30 million a year for his services and eventually signing for the team. I mean, it's not a bad retirement, is it? This was a big headline, understandably, a bold move and a signal that the team is deadly serious about the path that it wants to take and strive towards with the success that it has in mind. And even though this was a big public move, I guess, that drew a lot of eyeballs, that was a big part of it, and Lawrence Stroll, that is kind of how he plays the game by business. They've meanwhile been quietly building as well and evolving behind the scenes in a lot of other key parts of the team to put themselves in pole position for 2026. A huge move which started years and years ago was committing to building their state-of-the-art complex at the home of racing, right on the edge of the Silverstone circuit, investing huge amounts of money into their technology campus, filled with space for a growing workforce, now sitting at over 700 members across the team, costing up to 200 million to build. No small amount, is it? Part of that is their dedicated wind tunnel that they've built, which they started using in March 2025. Perfectly in time for the end of Adrian Newey's gardening leave from Red Bull. It's almost like they planned it. And this huge complex is a game changer for the team, with their design office, engineering, production, and commercial and manufacturing areas all under one roof. And with that, you'd imagine improvements in collaboration and better staff morale and understanding, and ultimately full control of the operation rather than relying on other third parties that they've got to deal with. By the way, we're waxing lyrical about all this money that's been spent building a whole new site from scratch, and the F1 Messiah in Adrian Newey coming to the team over into the design department, of course, heading that up, the chief of them all. But other quiet moves behind the scenes have also been pretty big plays. We just haven't heard much about them. A chap called Eric Blandin, who came over from the multi-title winning Mercedes team to impart his wisdom of aerodynamics, of which he had his mitts all over those incredible cars, especially you would feel the most unstoppable chassis of 2020 and 2021. To have that kind of expertise in the team is a no-brainer. And whilst they were poking around Brackley, they thought, well, we can bring along Andy Cowell too. He'll be quite useful in this new operation we are putting together, who oversaw a big part of the engine and power unit operation at Mercedes. And we all know how dominant that was for the team. And now he's Aston's team principal. So when you start to look back and piece it all together, a lot of these moves have had a big lead time on them, and perhaps looking to build a car that's quick at only a few circuits, only is strong at a few characteristics. Of course, the goal in F1 and for any team is to build a great all-round car, and you could argue that Red Bull did such a great job of in recent years with Max Verstappen at the helm. That is what they're aiming for. Instead, Aston Martin have adopted a strategy of time and patience, and you can't help but feel that slowly but surely it will pay off at some point, and all roads look like they're leading to 2026. Judging by this season's performance, you wouldn't be surprised if they'd written off 2025 altogether in terms of development to put a large amount of their time and energy into the 2026 car and the new regulations. In fact, back in July, Andy Cowell admitted himself in an interview that the team was focusing on the new regulations way back then. So maybe that's a reason why we are not seeing as much of a competitive outfit in Aston Martin at this point of the season. On the engine side of things, we've been used as well to feeling very familiar with Mercedes power at Aston Martin, and it's helped a little bit of their success in previous years. But it can't be ignored that they're moving across to Honda for 2026, which, despite the painful days with McLaren, they've shown their mettle with Red Bull in recent seasons and have contributed to Max's dominance and success. For me, when you couple all this together, they've been building, strategizing and planning up to this moment long term, and I think you'd be a fool to write off any team for 2026 given how predictable it is looking like it's going to be, but particularly for Aston Martin as well. In this new era, they've slowly been building all of this up in plain sight. You could say a lot of faith as well has been placed on Adrian Newey, a lot of expectation and promise on his talents being placed in the one man himself, but he's done it with lots of other cars, so I guess the thinking is, why can't he do it again? And the added fact as well that there probably hasn't been a team in a while that has been this committed from going from the ground up and having the history of the last few years they have built and settled in with to then lead on into the next few seasons to understand and gel together as a team. It's bold moves from a bold owner, and that is what F1 is all about. It is brutal, it is competitive, and I can very much see a dark racing green going to the top step of the podium, at least around there, for 2026. A concluding side note as well, that the driver situation might be maybe just the only thing that gets them a bit tangled in years to come. How long can Lance face these calls from fans that he's not quite the right driver anymore for Aston Martin? He's there only for certain reasons. And Fernando Alonso, of course, he's an incredible driver, doing what he's doing at his age. It is incredible. That discussion will continue to rumble on, but how long will he stay at the team and ultimately in F1? Who knows? I personally can't wait to see how all of this with Aston Martin unfolds and the dynamic that it will create with the rest of the teams on the grid. And that is why we love F1. That's the beauty of the sport, right? How can you see Aston's season playing out in 2026? Or are we just all a bit caught on the hype train? Are we getting ahead of ourselves? Comment below and let me know what you think. Subscribe if you're liking these videos, and I'll catch you in the next one.